Ian. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a real privilege. So this morning I'm going to share with you my story and some of the things that I learned, and hopefully if you can go away with a little bit of inspiration, motivation, and just one little snippet of something that you can apply to your everyday lives or your working lives, then I'll be very happy. So I'm going to begin by answering one of the most common questions that I get asked. So when people know that I'm an Olympian, their first question is, wow, the Olympic Games, that must have been amazing. And if I want the question answered very quickly, I'll just go, yeah, it was fantastic, brilliant, amazing. But I'm going to share with you the truth. The Olympic Games and the 2 weeks leading up to my Olympic final was horrendous. I don't think an hour went by in those 2 weeks leading up to it where I wasn't wishing that the ground would open up and swallow me up and I didn't have to be there. Because for an Olympian, the Olympic Games is something that you work towards for your whole career, and it comes along once every 4 years. And you are told that you have to be the best in the world on one particular date, one particular day, one particular hour, minute, second, countdown of a clock. When that gun goes, that's your time to perform. And it's your defining moment of who and what you will become once you cross that finish line. And when you cross that finish line, is it going to be tears of joy or tears of despair? And that's why it was so horrendous in the build-up for those 2 weeks. Now, I've got a video montage that I want to show you, which sums this up perfectly. So hopefully that gave you some tingles and demonstrated what it was all about. I think for me, that one of the biggest things that you might have heard there was the lyrics that really stand out for me that said, "Are you looking for a miracle? Let's make something happen." Because there are hundreds, thousands of athletes at the Olympic Games, and you can't go there hoping for a miracle. You've got to know what it is you want to do and how you want to do it. And I believe that you can do that in any area of your life. Iconic image here of Superman. I'm just going to give you some of my background story. I wasn't a young, precocious athletic talent starting off at the age of 5, 6. I didn't have any sporting role models, any idols. I just saw sport as being something you did for fun. I didn't have any aspirations to do it to elite level at all. I loved it, I enjoyed it, really competitive, but that was as far as it went. But I did watch sport on TV, and I saw British athletes at the World Championships, the Olympic Games, and I looked at them and I thought, wow, they're superhumans. I'm not a superhuman. So it was never on my radar to do the same thing. That was until I was 17 years old, and I picked up the Yellow Pages, before the days of the internet then, and looked for something new to do. Now, our family had moved to Twickenham in West London, and I thought it'd be nice to try something on the river. And so I looked in the Yellow Pages, and there was canoeing clubs, rowing clubs, so it was 50-50. I picked rowing. There were 2 clubs that were local to me, one about 4 miles away in Kingston, one just down the road in Twickenham. So I thought, well, I'll pop off to Twickenham, try that, that's the closest. And there was an island, it's located on an island in the middle of the river, but at the time I went down there, there was a bridge, and there were works being done, and I couldn't get across. So I went back home, looked back in the Yellow Pages, and there wasn't a telephone number for Twickenham, but there was for Kingston. So I called up Kingston Rowing Club, and I asked, how do you have a go at rowing? He told me to go down the next day, join the novices group. So I went down to Kingston Rowing Club, joined the novices group, and during the summer season, I went down twice a week, and the novices coach would tell us to go in the gym, lift a few weights, do some rowing on the rowing machine, and he'd go into the club bar and have a few pints and leave us to it. And this got really frustrating because I wasn't signing up to rowing to go in a gym and lift some weights and go on the rowing machine. If anyone knows what that's like, it's not something it's very enjoyable. So it got really frustrating. I wasn't getting out on the water, learning how to row. So I went through for about 4 or 5 weeks doing this, and one evening I thought to myself, if I go down there and I can't get out on the water tonight, then that's it, I'm not coming back again. Same thing happened, got told to go in the gym, lift a few weights, do some rowing on the rowing machine. So I just went through the motions. Afterwards, when I was finished, I grabbed my bag and I was about to walk out of the club and never come back again when this guy stopped me. And this man, hadn't seen him around, he hadn't seen me, he said, who are you? So I said, I'm just a novice, and I've been training with the novices group, but I'm not coming back because I haven't learned how to row. I want to go out on the water. He said, don't worry, come back tomorrow and I promise you'll get out on the water. So the next day, I went back down, thought I was going to get out on the water, and he said to me, just go on the rowing machine and do 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. But being a compliant person, I cracked on, did 20 minutes on the rowing machine as hard as I could. Afterwards, when I was finished, he sat me down, and he pulled out this book of data. He was going through the numbers, and he was saying, so you've just done a score on the machine that's as good as this girl who went to the Junior World Championships. You've just done a score that's as good as this girl whose career progressed, and she went to the Rowing World Championships. All these numbers spilled out, and he said to me, so one day, I think you could be good enough to row for Great Britain, maybe even go to the Olympic Games. And I just sat there, and I thought, this guy is crazy. Does he not know I'm not superhuman? I'm just an ordinary person. But at that moment, age 17, this guy sowed that seed, and he'd spotted the talent. He told me that I had the ability to do that, and that's exactly what I went and did. I believe it was total fate that I ended up there. Had I gone to Twickenham Rowing Club, and maybe no one had spotted my potential, I ended up at Kingston Rowing Club, and little did I know that I was walking into one of the best clubs for junior female rowers. The guy that stopped me from walking out that door, if I'd left 10 seconds earlier, I would have been gone. He stopped me from walking out that door. He turned out to be the women's coach at the Kingston Rowing Club, and he developed junior rowers through to senior team. So I couldn't have been in a better place for it. Again, fate that enabled that to happen. So as part of the rowing team, won medals at the under-23s, the juniors, the under-23s. Then I moved into the senior team. I was used to winning medals, moved into the senior team. 3 years running, we were ranked fifth. Fifth place, fifth place, fifth place. Wasn't working out how I'd planned. But finally, in 2004, Olympic year, I was put in a crew of a quad, the four of us. And we gelled, we're an amazing crew, came to fruition. We won the final World Cup race of the season, and we beat the German crew, who had won every single international race in the event since it had been established. We were on top form. We went to Athens. We were getting better and better and better. Went in as favourites for the gold medal, raced our heat. We won our heat. We did a faster time than the Germans in the other heat. It was going fantastic. A last-minute change to our race plan by a senior coach. The next day, we raced our final, and we lost. We came second. To me, I believed that we'd lost that gold medal, so I was devastated. I carried on for the following year. Our quad raced again at the World Championships, and I finally got the gold medal at the World Championships in 2005. But after that, I decided to retire. I was 24 years old. People thought it was a very odd thing to be doing with the potential that I had, still young in my career. But I'd spent a period of time rehabbing a back injury, so I was out of the boat. And it was a good opportunity for me to reflect where I felt I was at within my career and how I was feeling emotionally and mentally about it. And for several years, I'd been feeling really unhappy in the sport. I wasn't engaged in it as I knew that I should be. I was dragging myself through training every week, every day. When it became that I was dragging myself through just to get through that session, things weren't good. I found myself asking two questions that led me to the decision that I thought, I need to walk away from this. The first question, if I stand on a start line of a World or Olympic final, I need to be able to say to myself that I am the best that I can be to take on this race. The environment and the culture within the rowing team, for me, at that time, I wasn't ever able to sit on a start line and say, I have done the best that I can do to make myself the best that I can be. And I'm not happy to do that. The second question was, if I could look into a crystal ball and I could see myself winning gold in Beijing in 3 years' time, would I still want to carry on and do it? The answer to that question was no, because 10 minutes of happiness on the podium, but being miserable every day and not enjoying what I'm doing and not doing what I'm doing in the right way is not a good thing either. So I made the tough decision to walk away. However, fate took another twist. I ended up as part of the Great Britain cycling team a year later in 2006. Again, a random story of how that opportunity came along. So competing in Athens, 2004, I competed in the first week. Second week, it was run riot time. We got tickets to go and see lots of different events. One of them was the track cycling. I didn't know anything about all the other Olympic sports. I knew that rowing existed, but that was my world, that was about it. Went to the track cycling. I was with my now husband, and it was fantastic. It was incredible. The atmosphere was amazing. We were at the top of the steep bit banking of the velodrome. We got to see Bradley Wiggins winning medals. The crowds were, the noise, the atmosphere, it was amazing. It was like a massive showcase, apart from compared to rowing, which was just in the quiet, rowing down a rowing lake with hardly any spectators. Anyway, so the event finished, all the crowds cleared out, and we decided just to hang around, wait for the crowds to clear. And then my boyfriend spotted across in the crowds, he saw someone he knew from his triathlon days. So we went over and spoke to them. This guy was involved in sponsoring of British cycling, a particular athlete on the team, and he was really excited to meet me as a medalist. We kept in contact, and every so often when we saw each other, he would tease me and say, you'd be really good at the individual pursuit. The individual pursuit is a really simple event on the track. You just ride 3 kilometers round, it's 12 laps of the track as fast as you can. time trial, essentially. Easy peasy. But he'd said to me that that was the event that I should go for. I was still rowing at the time. Okay, I carried on 2005. I made the decision to retire from rowing, and I really wanted to get a buzz back about being an athlete, competing, doing something for fun, like it was when I walked into Kingston Rowing Club and first got started. So I called this guy up, and I said, how do you have a go on the track? He said, leave it with me. Got a call back. He said, the coach of British Cycling's women's team is going to give you a call. Random. A new coach had been instated at the cycling team, who had previously ridden for this guy on a sponsored road team. The depth of the women's team in the track team was pretty poor, so they were looking to identify new talent. The coach called me up, asked me to go to Manchester, went to Manchester Velodrome, rode around the track, got tested there, went in the lab, got tested on a static bike. The coach sat me down, he said, you've just produced some of the best numbers we've ever had from anyone that's been tested. And we think you'd be good enough to be part of the British cycling team and hopefully qualify for the Games in 2008. And I thought to myself, this guy is crazy. What? But it was like fate repeating itself, things happening all over again. And so I knew he had to be speaking some truth, and I went with it. And the new project, 2.5 years of turning me from novice cyclist into what the initial aim was to qualify for the Olympic Games, but ultimately becoming Olympic champion in 2008, it began. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey and what it is that I learnt. When I won my gold in Beijing, everyone asked the question of myself and my coach, how do we replicate that? How do we take an athlete from one sport and make them successful in another? And the answer to that is, I don't think you can, because for my story, it was, at the time, 28 years of my life experiences and 30-something years of my coach's life experiences, all coming together, the two of us, and then that journey of how we navigated the pathway to that medal. And I don't think that can be replicated, but what I do think is that certain things can be learned from it and other people can take. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of a kind of winning formula that I've put together. So when I reflect on my career, I've put together a winning formula that I think is made up of 4 areas that, for me, I think created the success that I had. First one, a winning environment. Second one, a winning strategy. Third one, a winning mentality. And finally, a winning soul. So if I take a look at environment, I've explained to you a little bit about my decision to leave rowing, how I ended up in cycling. I told you how I was a bit unhappy in the rowing team. Things were very different when I moved into the cycling team. It was pretty much like the rowing team was like being at school. So you're told by a teacher what to do, and you're led through. Whereas moving into the cycling team was like moving into a university environment where it was independence. You were there to progress yourself, and you used the expertise around you. I saw a quote that said, you must plant yourself where you'll bloom. And I found that that's exactly what I was doing when I put myself into the environment of the cycling team. I knew I would bloom there. This iconic image of the red arrows sums up some of the things that I think about the British cycling team. When we see the red arrows, we think of unity and precision, perfection, elitism, world class, being the best in the world. And that was exactly what the British cycling team were driven to do. That was the culture that we felt as athletes there. They also had this culture of happiness that they really pushed. So it was so enlightening to speak to the performance director who said, we want the athletes ticking the 8, 9, 10s of the happiness scale. Because a happy athlete is a successful athlete. They were focusing on being the best. And one of the key things that I think was the strength of the whole team was that they focused on the strength of the individual. So they weren't just focusing on athletes, they were focusing on everyone that made up the team. So whether it was a coach, whether it was a physio, whether it was someone working in the velodrome cleaning the changing rooms. It was all about making each person as best as they could be, because they were a crucial cog in the system. So for me, this was the perfect environment for me to excel. So talk a little bit about winning strategy now. Working smarter, not harder. There's only so much training that you can do. There's only so many hours that you can put into a working day. So let's think about what it is that you can do to be smarter, to get the most out of your day. You've got to have a dream and a vision and work out what it's going to take. I actually had one A4 document titled, "What's it going to take?" And I worked out what a potential gold medal winning time was, what that would look like, what every element of my training needed to be there to achieve that goal. And I made sure everything that I did every day in every session matched this document. I was going to cut out all the crap, not just do something for the sake of it. Everything that I did was going to fit that model, being smarter, not just training harder, not just doing more. A winning mentality. So you can have the best thought out plan, but it's about what's between the ears that counts. It's the strength of your mentality that's going to take you through. So struggling with motivation, obstacles that you've got to overcome every day. If the pathway was clear and there were no obstacles, it'd be an easy peasy. You'd get there very quickly. But we all know that every day there's lots of obstacles to jump over. And the stress and the pressure that we have, not just every day, physically and mentally, but when it comes to the big performances, how do we deal with those stresses and those pressures? Little warning sign here. Okay, I want a show of hands. Is anyone scared of spiders? Few. Friendliest one that I could find. Okay, so talking about stress and pressure and all those things about a winning mentality, I believe you can really work hard to learn about yourself, understand what it is that makes you tick, what it is that you can do to develop those. We can learn how to have that mental strength. One little anecdote that I want to tell you about was about how we can learn from everyday experiences and put that into practice when it comes to stressful, high-pressure situations or performing. So I have a little bit of a phobia of spiders. One day after training, I was home alone, resting on the sofa, and a spider ran out across the floor in the lounge. And had my husband been home, I would have been standing on that sofa screaming, and he would have been having to deal with the spider. But there was no one home, there was no one there. And I had literally a split second to get into the fight or flight mode. Do I let it go? But no, because it will come out and get me later that night, I can tell you. So in a split second, I had to get into the fight mode and deal with that spider. And that's what I did, humanely, of course, but dealt with the spider, and the elation that that gave me, that fear that I'd overcome, and how I suddenly flicked that switch and got into that fight mode to deal with it, I held that close. And randomly, that thought and that experience came up in a very high-pressured situation at the World Championships. So 2008 World Championships is a home championships in Manchester. And because I'd won a silver medal in the World Championships the year before, I was seeded as favourite. Two riders go off in the individual pursuit against each other, so lots of heats going off. And I was ranked in the final heat. Penultimate race was another British rider, and she was racing. And you can, I had a set time in my head that I thought I'd be able to do to win that World Championships. And the British rider beat that time. The crowd were going wild, screaming. The commentators were going crazy. And I had 1 minute turnaround before I had to sit on that start line and race my race. And it would determine whether I was going to win that gold medal or not. So 60-second turnaround, and could have been very easy to get into that negative thought process and go, well, she's faster than me, I can't go that well. But I thought of the spider, and I got into that fight mode of dealing with it. And I thought to myself, well, if she can do that, then I'm in for an amazing time. She'd broken my British record, so obviously the crowd was crazy. And I got on the bike, and I put my head down, and I put a big smile on my face, and I used the trick that I always do, which is turn negativity into positivity. You can try it yourselves. If you've got a glum look on your face, it's only going to trigger negative thoughts. You put a smile on your face, it's tricking the brain, positive thoughts. Dealt with the spider, on we go, smashed the race, new British record, and did a time faster than I thought I'd be able to do. All because I used an experience in everyday life in a high-pressured situation. Okay, so a winning soul. You can have your strategy, you can be in the right environment, you can develop that strategy and that mentality. You can work on all of those things. But I think the glue that holds it all together is the winning soul. It's the uniqueness of yourself, the motivations, the inspirations that you have, that you generate. It's what makes you tick. It's the focus and passion that you have. And I'm going to share with you 3 elements of my winning soul that I believe won me that gold medal in Beijing. The Chimp, Karate Kid, and Duende. So this is the Chimp. So as athletes, we all work with sports psychologists, but the cycling team had sports psychiatrists. You've probably heard of a guy called Steve Peters and his Chimp Paradox. For me, this paradox, the Chimp Paradox that he explains, sums up perfectly what it is to get into a winning frame of mind. So he talks about the brain having a logical and an emotional side, and a human side and a chimp side. So the logical side, your human side, is logical, unemotional, it's controlled. It's the state you need to be in for good performance. He talks about the emotional side of your brain being the chimp. It's that chimp that dances on your shoulder and gives you all the negative thoughts that makes you nervous, makes you worried, emotional, and not in control. So he talks about putting the chimp back in the box. So when you're feeling under pressure, you're feeling the strain. So when you're in a world championship or Olympic environment, what is it that can make you get back under control and deliver that performance? You put the chimp in the box and you function with your human side. I don't agree with him entirely. I think that you need to have a good balance of both, and that ultimately gives you the good performance. If you're entirely logical, you're unemotional, I don't think you've got that passion and that drive. I think you need a mix of both. So the Karate Kid, my second one. Who here knows of the Karate Kid film trilogies? For those who don't, so we've got the Karate Kid, Daniel, Mr. Miyagi, who's his coach and mentor. Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel karate, goes to some big competitions. In the third film that I saw, there's a scene where they're replanting a bonsai tree that's been uprooted. And Daniel says to Mr. Miyagi, "Do you think it will survive?" And he says, "Yes, it will, because it's got strong roots." And I really held that close, and I thought about surviving, being strong, being big is about planting your roots, creating those strong roots from which to build upon. And finally, Duende, a Spanish word about flamenco. It's undefinable, but it's kind of like this mysterious power that flamenco people talk about that happens between the dancer and the guitarist. It's kind of like a flow when the music and the dancer come together and there's a moment of perfection, and they can't really describe what it is. But what it is a bit like is athletes getting into the flow. When you're peaking in performance and you feel like you have all the power in the world, it's effortless. And that's what we're striving for, to get those moments of effortless perfection and high performance. And so when I read this about Duende, I took this as my word that I knew that I was aiming for and striving to develop. And I knew that when the fire was building and I knew that I was about to give a good performance, that this was Duende. I'd have it written on my bike, and this was the third kind of element of my soul that I knew that I needed to give for performance. So I'm going to take you back now to the beginning, my defining moment, that horrendous 2-week period leading up to the Olympic final in 2008. 30 seconds was on the clock, and I was on my bike, clipped in, looking down the velodrome track. And when it got to 10 seconds, the beep started. 10. And I thought to myself, shit. Can the ground just swallow me up? I don't want to be here. High pressure. Counted down to 9. And I thought, put the chimp in the box. And I was okay. And it went down to 8. Shit. No, I can't do this. And I thought, it's okay, I've got strong roots. And it went to 7. I was like, I'm going to deal with the spider. And it went to 5. And then the beeps kicked in really loud. Beep, beep, beep. And I knew that I had Duende, and I was going to go and win this race. And I became Olympic champion. Now, final slide. I had one of my sections of a winning strategy, a winning mentality was motivation. And I get asked a lot about motivation. How do you keep going? When the picture of the medals came out, there was gold, silver, and bronze. And it really became real that that's what I was aiming for. My dream was to become Olympic champion. But initially, when I started out the project, I was only looking to qualify for the Games because it had never been done before. But I'd lived through every scenario of going to Olympic Games. What if I didn't qualify? I was motivated to avoid that happening. What if I went to the Olympic Games and came last? That was a feeling I didn't want, so I was motivated to work harder to avoid that happening. And then I'd start thinking about what would it be like to win a medal, get a bronze medal, stand on the podium, make history winning a medal in another sport. And it felt amazing. But I got greedy and I'd think, no, I want a silver medal. And I'd think, what would it feel like to win silver? It'd feel even better. But no, gold. Gold's the one that I want. I'd picture that gold medal. And that was the one that I wanted hanging around my neck. So I'd imagine this scenario when I was out training. What would it feel like to stand there? And one of the proudest moments of my career was standing on the medal podium, having thought those thoughts and pushed through the hard days and the tough days. And the guy came over with a tray of medals, and he handed to the girl on the left the bronze medal, to the girl on the right the silver medal, and he handed me that gold medal. That was the best moment of my career. So I just want to sum up and say, cheesy line, everyone's gold medal is out there to go and get, but I'm not superhuman. Anyone can be superhuman. Fate plays a part. Make it happen. Make your winning formula work. You go out there and achieve what you want to. Thanks very much.
For Q&A. I think that says it all, really. What a remarkable story, eh? Rebecca, few questions from the audience, if that's all right. I mean, yeah, if we can take kind of 1 ounce of your story and implement it into our personal and professional lives, we'll all be better people. So thank you for sharing that with us. So yeah, have we got any kind of questions? This gentleman here.
So first of all, thank you for sharing your incredibly inspiring story. I think one other thing that we've got in common probably is that you've all dealt with lots of failure in the two. So I just wondered if you have a strategy for dealing with failure.
Always take it as a learning. Always take it as a learning opportunity. When we're successful, we go, great, let's move on, keep being successful, but we don't actually learn from that process. So a failure, don't see it as a failure, it's a learning opportunity. review, analyse. You can take more to prevent it from happening later on. So actually, I'd always think about embracing a failure, and if things were going well for too long, I'd get worried as well, because at some point that failure was going to happen, and how can we predict it? How can we stop it from happening? So if those things happen early on, then we can put things in place to stop them happening again when the big moment really counts. So it's about embracing it. Don't be disheartened by it. Just see it as making you stronger and better, as long as you really are kind of reviewing and analysing why it's happened, and able to move on by being stronger from it.
Any more questions? Got two gentlemen there, one at the back. I think Jerry's going to come over with the microphone, and we'll come to you next.
Brilliant story. How much do the coaches influence not just your technical ability, but your human capacity?
Yeah, really good question. I would say that for me, the coaches were fundamental. From the little bit I've told you about the rowing environment, it really drummed us down. They drummed us down. It was like being beaten with a stick to get the performance out of us. The cycling world, I would never have moved into it. I was very dubious at first, but from my initial day spent around British cycling and with my coach, I knew that he was something completely different, and he understood what it was that made me tick and embraced all of that side of it. And it enabled me to flourish and get the last couple of percent performance out of me. So I would say it's absolutely fundamental that your coaches, your mentors, the leaders are understanding of individuals' personalities and how they function, and to really draw that side out of them as well.
I think we had a question from this gentleman over here. I think Jerry's going to run over, or make his way through anyway.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for the presentation. You talked about your mentality kind of framework, and I was just wondering how that shifts from moving from the quad and a team sport to the individual pursuit, and dealing with being an individual contributor rather than part of a team.
Another great question. It is a different environment to deal with. Within the quad, you only make up 25% of that, really, ultimately. And I think what made us successful in the quad was the very first year that we actually worked to look at us as individuals and develop ourselves and see what we could contribute. So working together as a crew, but really developing each of us ourselves individually. Being an individual event in the cycling was obviously a lot easier. You don't have to deal with the interaction between people. It's much lonelier, not as great winning experience without having your buddies around you, but I think the pressure is higher when you're an individual, because it's all down to you, and you can't be rescued on a bad day. Everything's exposed, so it's tough as an individual, but depends on the personality that you have to be able to deal with that. Definitely working as a team in the quad brings so many more challenges, whereas it's kind of like a clean slate as an individual, that you don't have other areas inputting, so you can kind of develop a little bit more. But that's all fun of sport, really. And as in the cycling team, I was actually part of a team pursuit where there were 3 of us. So again, it was nice to be able to race and compete as an individual, and then kind of against your British competitors, but come together as a unit as well, to show how successful we were as a combination.
I think that's all the time we've got for questions, but Rebecca, are you staying around for the coffee break? So I'm sure Rebecca will be happy to kind of answer questions. Once again, a massive round of applause for Rebecca. Thank you so much.